The EU Foreign Ministers Council was held in Luxembourg today. A 14th sanctions package against Russia was formally adopted. Ministers also gave the green light for Kyiv to receive 1.2 billion euros of frozen Russian assets to support defense efforts.
Now, although Hungary usually throws a wrench under the hood of European assistance efforts for Ukraine, this time Moscow's biggest ally in the EU won't have a say in the matter. Now, joining us here to discuss today's meeting in Luxembourg is Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the University of Warsaw. Good to have you in the studio. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, let's begin with understanding what exactly happened, because it's important, because at the same time, Hungary has tried very much to veto anything that goes through in support of military support for Ukraine. We're looking at even the European Peace Facility, but this was different today. I think these 1.4 billion euros will be going to Ukraine. Explain us why.
Well, for me as a lawyer, it's very important what happens to me, what happens today in relation to the interpretation of the treaties and also the right of the member states to use their veto powers. So basically, today's decision that was taken by the foreign ministers of the European Union member states means that there will be the interpretation that the veto power could be somehow circumvented. Yes, so there will be a legal loophole created in order to bypass the member state, which in the initial proceedings either abstained or kind of didn't vote in favor of a specific solution. So it is treated like there is a second step in the procedure. So if in the first step the country abstained, then in the second step they will not be actually taken into consideration their position. Mm-hmm. So it's quite interesting, yes.
And this is somewhat of a precedent, I would imagine. This has never taken place before. So is this kind of a test as to whether it can be done?
Well, first of all, we need to understand the current political situation. Hungary indeed is a country which is going against the wishes of all the other member states of the European Union. So it is really impossible to reach any decision taking into consideration all of the European member states, because Hungary is going to use their veto powers. However, in the past, as we could see like half a year ago, when also the question of Ukrainian future membership of the EU was discussed and also vetoed, there was this possibility of Hungary also to abstain. Yes? So they didn't vote in favor or against. They just kind of, Viktor Orban decided to go for a coffee in this time. So that is also a possibility. I mean, we need to understand the European Union law is a very specific legal order. So here, again, a very important thing that we need to understand is also the political powers of different member states and also how they reach the consensus, the conclusions of the meetings. So here again, Hungary is playing as a member state who is not in favor of the solutions that all of the other member states would like to agree. However, here again, seems to be a consensus reached by the foreign ministers to try to overcome this position of Hungary. What is also interesting is that the Hungarian foreign minister didn't seem to be very opposing to the measures which are now discussed.
But he did come out on Facebook actually privately and did say some very harsh words, I believe, after that meeting today. So what he didn't say in public, he did say, at least on Facebook. That
I think also what we need to understand is that the politicians of the EU member states, sometimes they say different things on the EU level and different things which are directed to their national audience. So probably he would also like to be understood as a very tough negotiator for the Hungarian society. So this is probably why he also made this kind of statement.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because tomorrow is also key day. This marks tomorrow that meeting to actually move forward accession talks, finally, further accession talks with Ukraine and the European Union. I believe it's one of the last times the Belgian presidency has pushed this forward. This is on the calendar. I know the framework agreement has principally been agreed to, but let's say, what are, in your legal expertise here, is there any way that Hungary could still come out of this meeting tomorrow and say, no, we don't want this, change something in the framework agreement, pull the plug somehow? Or is tomorrow the key day where things start moving forward for Ukraine?
Well, first of all, we need to also know that Hungary is taking over the presidency in next a couple of months.
In a few days, right?
Yes, exactly. So, and they will be in charge of, let's say, presiding in the European Council for next month. I mean, on the one hand, the presidency in the European Council is no longer such an important position that could really influence the decision-making in the European Union. But still, I mean, they are in the position to, let's say, add some items to the agenda, to discuss some things, and also to, let's say, propose some solutions, some compromise. So here again, Hungary might potentially create some problems on the way. So indeed, now there is a time when the Belgian presidency is coming to an end to really try to push for the aspects, for the issues that might create more problems in the coming months. Whether Hungary is going to pose any problems, it's difficult to assess. I think that we need to see and also to understand what kind of negotiations are taking place behind the closed doors, because of course we as viewers, we do not know about all the arrangements that are being made, and here we need to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been in the works for months, actually. We kind of knew unofficially that we would come to this date. Now, if for some reason this is delayed over the next 6 months, then the Polish presidency takes effect at the beginning of the year. So does the item just become back on the agenda if Hungary is successfully able to stall the accession talks with Ukraine?
I think that the Hungarian presidency is going to be perceived as a test for the future Hungarian membership in the EU as well. To what extent they are really committed to the EU values, to reaching compromise and consensus, and to what extent they are willing to go 100% only after their interests, and also blocking the agenda, blocking the important issues. I think that there is increasing lack of patience between other member states towards Viktor Orban government. And if Hungary will decide to really push their agenda, it might be very dangerous for them, and it can actually put into question their future position in the European Union.
Well, we hear a lot about Article 7, but nobody's really pursued that, right?
True. I mean, it is, again, the European Union regulations are based on mutual respect, mutual understanding, and all the treaties that are founding European Union are based on the assumption that all the parties are acting on the goodwill, and also they are willing to cooperate and reach the compromise. So here again, I think that there is a hope that the Hungarian government will be, in the end, willing to cooperate. Maybe there will be a cost to that, political cost, of course, I mean, in terms of negotiation, but we will see how it will play out. For sure, Polish presidency, which will be after Hungarian presidency, will be very committed to pursuing the aid to Ukraine, and also to push the policies of the European Union in that direction.
But I know if we're looking, I think it's already concerning in and of itself. If we look already 6 months and skip a whole rotating council presidency, I think we have to deal with the facts that Hungary will take over on the 1st of July. Was concerned a little bit by the announcement, I believe, of the Hungarian Europe minister on some of the policy areas that the Hungarians want to focus on in 6 months. And I think they very much stated they want to move enlargement talks to the Western Balkans, not very much Ukraine, Moldova. They want to move the focus, and I believe even there was a statement that that same minister said that they're not even interested in opening a single chapter of the 35 chapters of actual accession, which takes a long time with Ukraine. So I think this is concerning, and the next point I want to ask you is if we're looking at also the Council, we're going to have different elections around Europe. We're looking at a very different France potentially in just about a month's time. We're looking at Austrian elections as well at the end of the year, potentially also there, right-wing government in some shape or form. We're looking at Germany not being very stable. So what kind of threats does that pose to looking at not just Hungary, but is kind of time on Viktor Orban's side, or how do you perceive it? He will have other allies potentially. Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, also part of government now. Is time on Orban's side in this regard? Will he have more allies in 6 to 12 months?
I don't think so, to be honest, because still, even if we look at the, let's say, rising popularity of right-wing parties in the European Union member states, still it is not very clear to what extent they will be willing to play the same game as Viktor Orban. Also, I don't really think that when we speak about French political system, even if the far-right parties, Front National, would take over the government, if they will. I mean, I'm not even sure that it will happen. However, even if we think about this possibility, still President has a very important role in this system and can really make the life of the Prime Minister and the ministers quite miserable if he wants. He has legal instruments.
We'll
to
have
do
a
that.
domestic focus, so he'll be very concerned with the domestic politics.
That's true. But again, speaking about Viktor Orban's agenda, I think that, again, in his interest, it will be to move the focus to Western Balkan countries, to move the focus out of Ukraine, for sure, especially when we look at Serbia, which is, as we know, quite in favor also of Russian point of view, Russian perspective. So again, here I can see that there might be some common positions, some common points between those countries. But it remains to be seen what will happen. I'm not really sure that even if we will see some transfers of power, some changes, we can at this point be certain that it will profit Viktor Orban agenda. We can see in Italian case that Prime Minister Meloni is not really in favor of cooperating with Viktor Orban on many issues. So here again, I don't think that it will be the case in the future.
Mm-hmm.
She is being sidelined to some extent by the EPP and others that seem to have the majority. But in terms of carrots, are there any carrots that can be dangled to get Hungary to cooperate and say a little bit more with the general consensus of the European Union?
More frozen funds.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hungary for sure is paying a lot of attention to how the European assistance is distributed. And also we need to understand that Viktor Orban government is for the last years heavily criticized for breaching of the rule of law and also how Hungarian system of also deployment of the EU funds works in practice. Yes? So there are a lot of accusations about how the funds are distributed in Hungary. So for sure, Viktor Orban would like to use this opportunity to gain something for himself, to strengthen his leadership in Hungary, and also to prove that he is a strong leader, and he is also, in terms of his rising opposition in Hungary, that he wants to be perceived as somebody who still can play tough in the European Union and still be respected in this game.
I'm also curious because you remind me of, I think, a very first precedent case not that long ago. Once the Commission actually awarded, I believe it was the end of 2023, with an enticement of Orban. So he walked out of that room for the coffee break at the European Council meeting. It was very much that the Commission then unfroze a certain amount, billions of euros for Hungary. I believe it was almost 20 or something on this line. Still more that was still frozen. But nevertheless, that was that carrot that he got at that point. But then the counter was that the Parliament itself decided to take the Commission to court. I think that's one of the first times that's happened. So what's happening with this? Are we going to see more of this play out? Because that was a huge deal some months ago. What's happening in that? And what could that potentially bode for Hungary and for the EU?
For sure, there are also some tensions between different European institutions. So there is a tension between European Commission and the European Parliament, between the European Council and the European Parliament. So here also there are some political ambitions and some challenges to the compromises which are reached behind the closed doors. And also I think the European Union citizens, they expect more and more transparency when it comes to decision making and also this kind of processes. So they are increasingly not happy seeing that some carrots are being given away just behind the closed doors. They would prefer this system to be much more transparent and also to have a better understanding what is happening, and that some of the positions can be respected, but some others which are against the principles founding the European Union should not be respected.
All right, so we'll need more of your legal expertise in the future to understand it all as we continue in this next cycle of European politics. Thank you so much. That was Professor Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik. Thank you so much for all that here in the
Thank
studio.
you very much. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.